Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, which is Taking the Guesswork Out of Product Management. I'm your host, Louise Stebbings, and I'm a marketing manager here at Revenera. And I will introduce our speakers in a few minutes, but before I do, just a little bit of housekeeping. So I'm sending out a little thumbs up or thumbs down symbol to your screens now. If you can see the presentation slide, and if you can hear me okay, if you can just press the green thumbs up, that would be great. Okay, thank you for doing that. And while you're doing that, I just want to let you know that the boxes on your screen are movable, they're resizable, so just rearrange everything for your viewing comfort. We're going to be completing this webinar in under an hour today, and if we can give you some time back, we will. Obviously, listen to the presentation, and if any questions are coming to your mind as you're hearing the presentation, there's a Q&A, there's a little questions box. If you type your questions into there, we will come to those questions at the end of the presentation. So please, anything that pops into your head, pop them into the Q&A box, and we will come to that at the end of the presentation. Some networks may cause the slides to advance more slowly. So if you notice that what we're saying is out of sync with what you're seeing, just press F5 on your keyboard, and that should refresh your browser. We also recommend sometimes logging off your VPN. That can help as well. And if you're experiencing any other technical issues, you'll see a little question mark button on your screen. That's the help tool. So if you click onto that, you'll get the answers to any sort of common issues that you have if you're experiencing those in the webinar. And just to let you know, you'll get a recording of this webinar and a copy of the slides within the next 24 to 48 hours. So don't worry too much if you miss certain bits. You'll be able to catch up again in the next day or so. So let me introduce our speakers. As they are Michael Goff, who is Product Marketing Principal here at Revenera, and Dan Barrett, who is Analytics Solution Consultant. And Michael and Dan, they've got a solid history of working in software usage analytics at Revenera and also at Revulytics, who Revenera acquired earlier this year. They've got an enormous amount of knowledge and experience in helping software vendors understand how customers use their products and how to turn that knowledge into profitable output. So with that, Michael, I will hand over to you.
Thank you, Louise, and welcome everyone. Dan and I are very excited for today's webinar. Our goal today is to provide you with some meaningful insights and inspire some new thinking around product management, its processes, and how you can integrate software usage analytics as part of your planning and day-to-day practices. Now, we titled the webinar, Take the Guesswork Out of Product Management, so I want to take a moment to explain what we mean by that. Now, the word guesswork may feel a little bit strong, and I'm sure no one attending today's webinar is on a product team that's completely flying blind, at least I hope not, but you probably, if not definitely, have many sources of input, sometimes competing, into how your product should be built. Your customers likely provide feature requests. They're already using your product and know it well. You do competitive analysis that helps you identify what others in your space have already developed. Your sales team, probably not shy from sharing information from prospects and existing customers on the features that they need to close their deals. And then there are the hippos, the highest paid person's opinion. Often that's someone on the executive team who wants their vision incorporated into the product. And finally, there's your product team, who are the experts on your application and are the closest to your product. And while all of these can be valuable resources, and this list is by no means exhaustive, these types of input can often be anecdotal or subjective. And we believe that even the best thought out product roadmaps can benefit from layering quantitative analytics on top of the qualitative inputs that you receive, which begins to take the guesswork out of the PM role. Now, usage analytics data can help validate all these sources of suggestions for your product roadmap. After launching new features and functionality, it can actually be quite satisfying seeing usage data that they're really being used and that the underlying assumptions that you made about what users want are validated by the objective data that you collect. So I'm going to try to share a video with you. So if you don't see it, let's get there. So now you should be seeing a video of some kids on a slide. You'll see that they are not actually using the slide. And why am I showing this? Well, Of course, your underlying assumptions may not always be spot on. And what happens when you design and build a great product that you know is cool and put it out into the wild without analytics? You may find you lack the insights to understand how your end users are truly interacting with it. And this video may be a bit extreme, certainly amusing, but I know we've all scratched our heads once or twice when a user tells us how they actually use our products or features. Even when we think we know how a product should or will be used, users can surprise us. And if this video is any indication, sometimes those ways might even be better. So let me just jump back into our slides. Whoops. Okay, so you should all be back seeing the image of the slide. And Dan?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Michael. I'll take it from here. So let's assume for today's purpose that we all understand the basic value in collecting product level analytics. And here we have a quote, which is a little older. I think it's taken from 2018, but it's still a very interesting and very relevant fact from Gartner. Today, many companies are well on their way to being data-driven when it comes to measuring application usage. In the next year or so, we expect to see nearly 75% of product teams relying on software analytics. And we also have another quote from Gartner, which is a little bit newer. And here, it's no surprise that market demand for analytics is going to continue to grow with time. And the anticipation is actually that by 2022, almost 90% of companies will consider analytics as an essential competency. The reason for this is because analytics helps to initiate product and marketing decisions. Analytics also helps to measure the results of those decisions in terms of adoption and also customer health. This is what's pushing so many companies to understand analytics as a core asset to their overall operation.
Thanks, Dan. So let's take a moment here to level set on what we mean by software usage analytics. Once again, we're going to look to Gartner as a trusted source for a definition. And they say software usage analytics is the detailed tracking and analysis of users' interaction within a software application. And Gartner goes on to mention that this can be at various levels of aggregation, whether it's a particular user running your software or looking at users in larger groups or cohorts, either at an organization level or often, as we see in our solution, as a segment of users with similar attributes or behaviors. And perhaps most importantly is the last part of the definition here. We start getting into taking the guesswork out of product management and see that usage analytics can really help you start making informed business decisions around improving customer experience, prioritizing feature enhancement, measuring user adoption, tracking compliance, and providing real-time user help. So there's a lot here about how software usage analytics can contribute to your organization, and it speaks to the breadth of how analytics can help not only your product team, but can be extended out to other teams and functional business areas. It's important to note, though, that this isn't an all or nothing approach. Your use of analytics is going to grow as your maturity and your familiarity increases. So let's talk a bit more about the stages of maturity. For the purpose of our discussion today, we're going to divide things up into 3 stages: crawl, walk, and run. So if you're new to software usage analytics or in the crawl stage, on day 1, you're going to start discovering eye-opening data and insights that are definitely useful. But as you continue using analytics in the walk stage, you'll begin to ask deeper questions from the data, and the insights you will have will prompt you to ask more granular questions that are specific to your application usage and begin to get a bit more complex. And finally, in the run stage, you become more proactive. You start taking the data you receive and extend it beyond your analytics platform, perhaps through integrations with third parties, or you begin to engage your customers based on their specific usage behaviors. So let's dive into more detail for each of these stages. In the crawl stage, when you're just starting out with analytics, you're really beginning to discover the data. Maybe it's your first analytics platform, or you've only had raw log file data to this point, or maybe you just had a poorly defined analytics setup before. They're going to be fresh and new insights for you and your product team. And these give you the lay of the land on who your users are, their operating environments, and how much usage your product is getting. And while calling it the crawl phase may seem like it's basic or simple, it's not. There are valuable insights to be gained here because they reduce assumptions and give clarity into core decision-making processes. So we're going to have Dan go over 5 types of aha moments, some quick wins you can get that our customers have experienced once. And this is sort of in the context of our platform's reports, but these are relatively universal across different analytics providers.
Cool, thanks, Michael. So the first quick win that we have here is memory. Users can have a variety of hardware configurations, and knowing this will help your R&D team to replicate and also test in environments that are similar to what your user base has. You'll know which hardware specs to focus on when developing and when to drop support as technology starts to improve. Next, we have resolution. Understand the variations in frequency of different display settings that users might have. This can be very critical when you have an application that's resolution dependent, things like modeling, rendering, font applications, and other programs which might be graphics heavy. Your UI and UX team will know what resolutions to optimize their designs for, and similarly, which aren't as popular. Next, we have operating system. You can see adoption rates across all OS platforms and versions. For example, if your engineering team just developed a version for a new platform, you'll want to make sure that those resources were well spent. This is useful data for your marketing team. If the adoption rate doesn't line up with what you expect, you might want to refocus your efforts to target prospects which are in a particular OS segment. Next, we have active users, which is typically thought of as your daily typical dashboard. You'll see if overall activity is where you expect and if customers are engaged day to day with your product as a whole. You'll also get a feel for how many users are coming on board and how many might be abandoning your product. This report is very shareable across your whole organization for understanding the health of your product and business. And lastly, we have geography. When you're managing a global application, you might not have a physical presence in every geography. You need to understand where your product is most popular, and you might even see activity in places where you don't expect to. This will drive localization efforts for product, marketing, and also sales operations. And so next, what I'd like to do is take you through a case study here. So Celibri is a leader in the construction industry when it comes to quality control. Thousands of professionals across the globe use Celibri software every day. And Celibri is a company whose goal it was to become more data-driven. In the past, they had gathered some anecdotal feedback. However, obtaining this type of feedback was difficult because their customer base is so diverse. They support all types of end users all across the globe. They required analytics so that they could come up with a quantitative view of actual user behavior. Celibri implemented an analytics solution, and what were the results? Celibri started seeing actionable insights in only 6 short weeks. At that point, they could start making powerful decisions with a relatively basic level of analytics. They were able to collect geographic data on adoption rates, and this helped drive decisions on localization, marketing efforts, as well as educational support. They also collected general data on feature usage, which helped them quantify adoption and usability, and really focus their R&D efforts on what mattered most to their customers. Now, here's something that's really interesting. They had also assumed that most users were running older hardware configurations, but the data itself told a completely different story. So after collecting data on hardware and system config from their end user machines, the intelligence helped them realize that most of their users had more powerful and more robust systems than what they had assumed. This allowed them to now justify spending resources to develop new processing-intensive features and functionality which could utilize the more powerful hardware. Ultimately, their analytics solution helped them increase their agility as an organization. They could quickly recognize usage shifts and anticipate new customer requirements. Overall, their analytics helped them support their diverse customer base and extend their competitive insights.
Thanks, Dan. So let's move on to the walk phase. In the walk phase, you start digging deeper into the data. You've got experience analyzing usage data, and that prompts you to ask more questions that will then prompt additional questions as you begin to discover trends, patterns, and surprising behaviors. So for example, which actions are occurring in your product? How are features and functions accessed and used? Are there specific menus, controls, or dialog boxes getting more use than others? How do users engage with my product? How sticky are certain features? What do average session runtimes look like? Are they different for different user segments? What usage patterns point to issues with churn and retention? What kinds of users do I have? Can I segment them by persona or by roles? And which are the most or least based on user profile? What features are used most or least? And then what data is specific to my product? You might want to ask which custom product properties you should be capturing, and are there important numeric values, custom numeric values that you should track, like how long a process takes to run. So there are a lot of questions that you'll think of once you start digging deeper into the data. But fortunately, Dan's going to dig into the case study now to give you some more context and insight on what product teams see at this stage.
Cool. So here's another great case study based around the walk stage. So we have CNC Mastercam. This is a state-of-the-art CAD/CAM product used in the manufacturing industry. It's also a mature product with over 1,200 features and functionalities, all sorts of dialogues and user controls. So CNC wanted to reorganize their software in a new user interface design. They decided they wanted to support a Windows ribbon style UI, and they wanted to logically group certain features and functionality together. Now, keep in mind that even though you might not be the same size or in the same industry as Mastercam, like Mastercam, many of your decisions have probably been driven by anecdotes or assumptions or data from a very small sample size. This was the case for Mastercam, and they wanted to take a more data-driven approach. Also, even though Mastercam had been collecting analytics data for some time at this point, we actually see most companies are relying on analytics data to influence product design decisions within the first year of the program. So what was the result for Mastercam's redesign? They were able to reduce the UI redesign from a 36-month project to an 18-month project, and this allowed them to free up all sorts of time and resources. They answered critical feature usage questions like which features are used most often, which features are used together, which features they needed to promote a little bit more. They also observed that certain features were used most frequently at the start of the month when a machining shop would plan that month's job. And other features were used more so towards the end of the month when shops would typically do inventory planning for the next month's job. They also discovered something that they didn't expect, which was that feature usage varied very heavily based off of geography. So a user in Germany might use different feature sets than users in the United States compared to users in Japan, and so on. This level of deeper analytics helped influence design decisions with regards to grouping different features and functionality together. Now, as they continue to use analytics, Mastercam is able to preemptively find and fix product issues as well as make improvements. This, combined with their redesign, has helped them realize a software application that is easier to learn. This is a key competitive advantage, and without analytics, much of their redesign would have been a shot in the dark. Now, here we see a screenshot of the older Mastercam UI. As you can see, this is a mature product with lots of different features and functionality. And here we have the new Mastercam UI. So it's a Windows ribbon style interface with specific features and functionality grouped together in a logical way.
Thanks, Dan. So the last stage we're going to cover is the run stage. In the run stage, you're ready to get proactive with the usage data that you've been collecting and analyze. So what does that mean? So here are some examples. First, by leveraging usage analytics, you can drive engagement through highly segmented in-app messaging. So for example, if you see that there's a segment of users that has not spent much time using the features that drive the most value from your application, you can send that segment educational messaging in the application that encourages exploration and use of those features. This can be especially helpful during evaluation periods when you want to ensure that these users convert to a paid version and become customers. Likewise, you can explore the user workflow within your application to go beyond feature usage and really explore how users are moving from task to task or feature to feature. Are users taking the expected paths you anticipated? If not, perhaps there's an issue with your UI or additional education is required. And with insight into user flow, you're better able to optimize your application and improve the customer experience. Additionally, you can augment quantifiable analytics with qualitative feedback. If you're interested in hearing what users think about particular functionality, it only makes sense to ask those users who have used that that feature a certain number of times for their opinion on it. You don't necessarily want to do a broad-based survey for a very specific question. Better yet, ask for that feedback from the user segment through in-app messaging, so you're reaching them in the context of your question and while they are engaged with your application. And finally, integrating usage analytics with other systems can give you a more robust view of your customers. For example, bringing usage analytics into your other systems like business intelligence, CRM, ERP, marketing automation, and e-commerce systems can provide richer insights into customers throughout their life cycle. So Dan's going to share a case study of how one customer is really running with usage analytics and how it's extended its benefits beyond the product management team.
Great. So lastly, let's talk about TechSmith's use case, which really totally exemplifies the run stage of analytics. TechSmith is an industry leader in screen recording and screen capture software. You may be familiar with their flagship products, Snagit and also Camtasia. So TechSmith is a highly customer-oriented company, and they wanted to drive the value of their solution by improving the end-user experience universally. For them, shipping features was really only half the job. They wanted to make sure their end users were being connected with these valuable features that they had spent all this time and resources to develop. They also wanted to augment their qualitative insights from things like surveys with comprehensive quantitative data from usage analytics. TechSmith had started out with their own homegrown analytics solution, but this actually required too much maintenance work, so eventually they migrated to something that was more turnkey. Now, the result of the analytics project could really be appreciated across the entire organization at TechSmith. The product team realized that the video recording capability that was included in their screen grabbing software was actually much more popular than they had initially assumed. They were also able to improve user experience by putting popular features up front in the UI and pushing back some of the more niche and obscure features. TechSmith also started exploring path analytics, which was kind of what Michael had just detailed. This is a more advanced analytics functionality, and it helps organizations to measure a typical user's workflow within the application. Now, the marketing team was also able to make use of the analytics data in their own way. They used the data to improve advertising and email campaigns by identifying specific user trends and segments. They also use the intelligence to dictate content management by specifically focusing on their customers' wants and needs. Finally, the data is also used by the sales and support teams. So TechSmith has used contextual in-app messaging to accelerate trial conversions and to assist with cross-selling different products. They've also sent out targeted NPS surveys, which are localized to specific users. For example, TechSmith didn't even have a French version of their product, but they sent out French NPS surveys and had an incredibly high response rate because of the localization effort. Lastly, user engagement metrics help to quantify product usage for their big enterprise accounts. These are crucial metrics from a renewal and retention standpoint. And so, as we can see, TechSmith's use of analytics has become really holistic. Their organization has completely and totally adopted an analytics-driven mindset.
Thanks, Dan. So here's a proverb you may be familiar with. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. And the point of that is that the best time to get started is now. So don't worry if you're not collecting analytics yet. While the longer you collect usage data, the more it and your knowledge matures, there's still lots of value in the data that you'll get even in the early stages. Adding analytics to your business helps you define in a better way your overall goals and vision, and also helps your product team take the guesswork out of managing your roadmap and processes. And hopefully, as you've seen today, there's tremendous value you can get throughout the crawl, walk, and run stages. So we do have some time for questions. I do want to point out We do have 3 case studies available on our site if you're interested in those on Celibri, Mastercam, and TechSmith. And there's also an ebook that accompanies this webinar if you're interested in that, Take the Guesswork Out of Product Management. So if you have any questions, I think we've already got a few come in, but please feel free to enter them into the Q&A box. And I will now turn things back to Louise and see what we can help you with.
Great. Thanks, Michael. That's fabulous. We've got a few questions. I'm just scrolling through. I think this first one's for Dan. What's the effort involved with implementing usage analytics into my application? And this person says they know that all the projects are different, but what does a typical timeline look like once we decide we want to move forward?
Yeah, so I think the answer to that, Louise, is that it's sort of going to depend on what kind of solution you decide to go with. Whether it's kind of going back to that TechSmith case study, whether it's something that's going to be homegrown or something that's more turnkey. So, a more turnkey style solution, a lot of the data collection and aggregation and reporting mechanisms, all that should really be automated by the turnkey solution. So from that perspective, it should be pretty quick for you to drop in a solution like that and start to collect data. I know with our own technology, we usually recommend I think it's 5 developer days worth of effort. In reality, many of our customers, if not all of our customers, find that it takes even less time than that. But, another approach is certainly the homegrown solution as well. So when you're building your own homegrown solution, you do need to sort of take into account the time it's going to take to build out the data collection mechanism, the reporting mechanism, and then also the back end to host all that data, in addition to the sort of ongoing maintenance aspect as well. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that a homegrown solution is going to be bad. It is probably going to require more work, however, but it also allows for kind of that flexibility as far as what you want to do with that data once you've collected it. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that turnkey solutions don't allow for that flexibility as well, because a good turnkey solution is also going to have different capabilities as far as data export and an API functionality to get access to that underlying data as well. So really, the short answer is that the timeline can vary, but with a more turnkey style solution, you can actually be up and running with a data collection tool in really a number of days.
Great. That's good news, I think. And we've got one question here, which is probably quite a hot topic, I think, for quite a few people. How, in our experience so far, how do you handle users who don't want to be tracked? Yeah,
so of course, with GDPR, which was back in, I think, May of 2018, that GDPR was sort of activated, and now every company needs to comply with GDPR. The topic of data and privacy has certainly moved to the forefront of the conversation, although it's always been a hot topic for any number of years now. As far as what an analytics solution should look like and how it should be compliant with GDPR, our typical attitude towards GDPR is that when you're doing data collection, you certainly need to provide notice to users that you're collecting this data. Many of our customers will also go through the level of gaining consent as well. So they'll provide like an opt-in, opt-out mechanism to their end users as well, because they want to be conscious of their customers' privacy, and they want to give them the capability to opt out of tracking should they want to. Now, from a collection standpoint, again, within scope of GDPR, you're actually allowed to collect this analytics data when the data is being used for research and development and for product improvement purposes, which should really fall within that scope of research and development. So if you're collecting this product level data to make your product better, then you're within scope of GDPR to collect this data. Now, what you can't do certainly is collect this data and then share it with third parties. That kind of goes against, everything that GDPR was put in place to solve. You cannot be sharing this data with other third-party entities. Now, another thing to note is the anonymous aspect. Do you want to collect data that's more personally identifiable, or do you want to remain anonymous, or how do you want to handle that? And really, For all sorts of different companies, we've seen all sorts of different approaches happen. Our analytics solution is anonymized by default, but we do give customers the capability to track data which might be more personally identifiable or that might be able to be mapped to a particular company. Again, not all customers will choose to collect that more personally identifiable data. Some will, some won't, because of, again, the privacy concerns. So again, I think what's key here is a good analytics solution is going to expose the capability to opt in or opt out. But ultimately, what's also key is that it's up to the organization who's doing the data collection as far as what their organizational approach to privacy and data collection is.
Thanks, Anna. We've got another question on this topic, and we'll just go for a couple more minutes now. So with regards to in-app messaging, a similar question around privacy. How does this person make sure that personalized messaging complies with privacy concerns?
Yeah, that's also another really good question. So as far as in-app messaging goes, the benefit of in-app messaging, at least the way that we handle it, is that it's contextual and it's targeted, but it's also anonymized. So now what that means is based off of the data that you collect within our solution, but also this is probably true of many analytics solutions, is you can look at data associated with a particular segment of users and a particular cohort of users based off of all the different properties of those users, but without necessarily knowing who those users are. Again, an anonymized data collection tool. So with regards to in-app messaging, again, with a solution like ours, you can still target those cohorts of users based off of their profiles and based off of how they're using the products and based off of what features and functionality they're using or not using, while still remaining anonymized. So you're sending data, you're sending these messages to users based off of, again, their profile, their feature usage, stuff that's all contextual, but you don't necessarily need to know who these people are. And I think that that's one of the power of in-app messaging solutions, is being able to be contextual with regards to how you display these messages while remaining anonymized.
Thank you. So that's I think we've kind of covered privacy there. I've got one final question, which I'll put to Michael. So this is a little bit more sort of company-wide. So how does this person get people in their company interested or excited in the usage data that they're collecting?
Sure. So I'll speak as a marketer to this issue, Louise, and to the person who asked this question, and then I'll sort of go a little bit broader too. But if you're selling software that can be downloaded, which most people are, a lot of people are, you have a lot of marketing data that leads you right up to the point of that download. So you sent them an email, or you're able to track how they got interested enough to download that. But once they download it and install it, it can go dark if you don't have software usage analytics. The benefit of usage analytics is you can see usage. So you can see, okay, we know that we have a 21-day trial. Certain steps should occur during that process. And so to get people in your organization interested, say, hey, marketer, how would you like to know what's going on, 3 days in, 7 days in, with our trial software, but also how would you like to be able to do something about it? So if you see that there's, as Dan just sort of alluded to, a segment of users that aren't engaging with the features that drive the most value, you can send that segment an in-app message. Now, of course, if they're really not using the product that much, you can then do some email campaigns and educational things to get them engaged that way. From a sales perspective, one of the big issues we touched upon earlier is sort of retention of customers and churn. We all know that it's a lot more costly to acquire a new customer than it is to keep an existing one. So if you're able to track engagement with your audience over time, and you see that certain accounts are not as engaged as they should be, you can sort of predict that could be a challenging conversation at renewal time, and you can get in front of that conversation. So one way to get sales on board is to share this capability with them and let them know that these are some of the benefits. And I'm assuming that part of this question was about, how do I build support to get this project going? And I would say, both, customer success folks are also interested in sort of that retention, renewal type discussion as well. And then finally, I will just sort of mention it because it is an area of expertise for us, is on the compliance side of usage analytics. We obviously have Revenera Compliance Intelligence, which is a different product, but in concert with that, in terms of identifying unlicensed users of your software, if they come back and say, well, we really don't use it all that much, Compliance Intelligence will give you some information on that, how many machines it's installed on, how often it's used, things like that. But if you can then also have Revenera Usage Intelligence running, you can say, oh, you know what, we know you're using our high-value features and that you really need to pay us. So a lot of benefits across the organization, and I think data is really powerful and can get a lot of things solved for folks. And I think most different business functions across the organization are going to be interested to see what usage intelligence can bring home. So I think that's it.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Michael. That's a pretty comprehensive answer. So I'd like to say thank you to Michael and to Dan and to all the attendees. Thank you for your time and your attention today. You'll get a copy of the deck and the recording within the next 24, 48 hours. And if you have any questions in the meantime, visit us on the website, reach out to us via Contact Us, and we'll be really happy to help you. So again, thank you very much for your time today, and just keep an eye out for a copy of the recording and the slide deck to arrive in your inbox within the next day or so. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.